Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to give my opinion on the current administration, what's been going on. Trump did an interview last night with Laura Ingraham. It did not go over well with the base. People saying he's dismissive. It's more of the same in terms of him blaming Biden for the current economy. And just what's the dynamic? We knew Trump was going to change his stance at least a little bit after the off year elections. Not that the elections are a big panic moment for the GOP. It's off year elections. It's two liberal states, but the margins were quite large, and people saying, well, that's a precursor for the midterms. Trump shifting his focus, now coming out with a 50-year mortgage, which went over as kind of like a lead balloon. Nobody liked it. And also talking about the $2,000 stimulus, the perception of that, or I should say the reception of that, seems to be a little bit better. You can see Trump here talking about the 50-year mortgage, people saying they're never going to own their home. And so what do I think is happening here in terms of Trump? I think there's a heavy emphasis on the current economy, younger voters, a lot of people talking about Gen Z, the shift we're seeing within the Republican Party. And so I think Trump is trying to appeal to them more, and just it's an overall domestic economic push. You look at Trump's approval rating right now, does it really matter? I mean, the next major elections are in a year, so it really doesn't matter outside of me doing a video about it and talking about where it currently is, and the fact that relative to the rest of Trump's term, at least, the start of the second term, it has not been good recently, sitting, minus 11 and a half, basically at a low. And so, listen, I also think some of that's because of the shutdown, and so with the shutdown ending, he'll probably go up a few points, but does this really matter at this point? Really, it doesn't. I mean, if it's here a year from now or 8 months from now, it's more of a problem, but you look at the economic situation, it's like a light bulb switched on, and people are like, well, the economy sucks, and now it's Trump's fault. And I would imagine that's because Trump has been in office now, not a year, but like around 10 months, and so people think, well, now the blame gets passed from Biden to Trump. And so that's kind of what's going on here. And Trump is more dismissive. He doesn't want to take accountability for the current situation. The reality is, when it comes to policy on the economy, you're not going to change. Well, I mean, when you think about it, Trump implementing the tariffs, that's not something that's going to bring down prices. An immediate impact, it's probably going to do the opposite. It's just based off of, I mean, if you wanted to bring down prices, you would allow everything to be sent to China and made there, because you could potentially get it as optimized as possible. And so you'd be eliminating all the tariffs. In the long run, it would be a horrible idea because we wouldn't produce anything. But his tariff policy, I don't think it's really hurt in terms of the inflation, maybe by 0.2, 0.3%. But inflation has not really been something that's crazy negative or something that I would say Trump and the administration are causing by doing these tariffs. I do think that when it comes to like the blame being shifted from like 5 months ago, people could say, well, this is Biden, this is his economy. Now it's being passed to Trump because we're 10 months in. You're not really going to find an economic policy that shifts things to the point to where houses become less expensive. You got to understand, if the housing market crashes or goes down, I mean, the stock market's very likely to go down as well. So it's like there's a yin and a yang. And I think young people, that's one of the huge things. They can't afford houses. I think a lot of that is competitiveness, the amount of immigrants the United States has taken in. Also, there are some major zoning problems in the United States when it comes to like zoning for residential. And that tends to be a bigger problem that also drives prices up. You've got BlackRock and Blackstreet buying everything up. And so that's another issue. But, the approval rating right now is not great. You do look at, you move on down, Trump talking about the tariffs and what he wants to do with that stimulus check. I think Trump's going to deploy, if they do something like that, it would probably be best as a stimulus versus, or you want to call it a stimulus or not. People say it's not a stimulus. Well, no, it is. It's going to interject and stimulate the economy. Now, the money is not being printed. It's being reallocated, but still, the purpose of the money from the tariffs, Trump had said originally, was we're going to pay it down. We're going to pay down the debt. We're going to try and cut into some of the deficit through the money generation from the tariffs. And so now they're saying, well, we're going to just give people that money. And then if there's anything left over, I'm not sure there will be anything left over depending on how many people are eligible for the $2,000. Whatever is left over goes to paying down the debt. And so the reason that's the case is because if you just use all of it to pay down the debt and you've got the midterms upcoming, the voters are not likely to give you as much credit versus just giving them $2,000 or giving them some type of tax refund to the tune of $2,000, or maybe it's relative to their income. I don't know exactly. I've heard it's $2,000 to middle class and low income people. Whatever that cutoff is it 400K? Is it 100K? I'm not sure. They still haven't put out an official position on that, and Scott Bessent came out and kind of slow played it and said, well, maybe it's going to be a different type of refund. But if that's the case and it's like a refund that's hidden, that's going to be a problem in terms of trying to win the midterms. And maybe they'll give the refund in June or July and wait a little bit past tax season to possibly try and cater to the midterms. And, the midterms happening obviously late in the fall. Maybe that's the plan that they end up going with. So, look, when it comes to the economy, I will say fundamentally, we're really not seeing a crazy increase in, it's more of the same. And I'm not saying it was a good situation under Biden, but this is not like it's gone catastrophic or anything. If anything, you could say you've got inflation to the point to where you want to call it tamed at 3% or 3.1. You have it at 3.1. You are taking in a ridiculous amount of money with inflation relatively still low. Or I don't know if I'd call it a ridiculous amount of money relative to what our budget is, but still, if you bring in $300 billion off tariffs and some of that money gets used, as a stimulus, I do think the voters are going to give Trump credit for that. And you do have the rate cuts. You've got 2 rate cuts, possibly another rate cut. So the interest rates are going to be at around 3.75, possibly by end of year 2025. And so that's going to have an effect. And I do think you're talking about all-time highs, which honestly, that's kind of how the stock market works, at least the index funds. But you are hitting more all-time highs in the stock market. You do have the price of crude oil at a low, which is affecting domestic gas prices. They're also at like 5 or 6 year lows. So it's more so like this recent blaming that's getting passed on to Trump. It seems to be more so just the voters saying, okay, so he's been in now for 10 months and nothing's changed, so it's his fault. That's kind of where I'm seeing. It's not really, you could say maybe the tariffs, but the tariffs have really not caused much inflation, at least relative to 2022, 2023 levels under Biden. And that you could say is a reaction of COVID. And they printed a bunch of money. You could say there's other circumstances at play. However, there is a trade-off with these tariffs if you do give out some type of stimulus check or some type of tax refund. But I think a lot of this recent stuff, like within the past few weeks, and there's like more negativity because the off-year elections went the way that they did, and there's going to be more propaganda for liberals, and you also have the shutdown. It's kind of compiled on top of everything, and it's come together, and you've got Trump giving these interviews. The guy's a boomer. These Gen Z kids, they're not going to be able to relate to him at all. And he says stuff and he gets really bullheaded. And some of the statements he was making in this reminded me of the Epstein saga and what he was saying about that, and kind of trying to disassociate and rage and be like, anyone that, that wants the Epstein files is not a MAGA supporter or whatever he said. And he'll just get really angry. And then he always says, I'm the one that invented MAGA, so I know best. And it's like, well, that's just not how it works. But I think a lot of people will support him no matter what. But you are seeing the younger kids start to say, okay, I would imagine they're saying nothing is changing. You want to say, well, Trump's economy is terrible. Well, terrible relative to what? We barely have any more inflation, and we're taking in $300 billion, and we've got interest rates that are about to go down by another 0.25%. So that's 3.25 basis point drops within the last 3.5 months. And so the Fed obviously doesn't think we have a terrible inflation problem. Why do they keep cutting rates? So, like, the fundamental, economic situation within the economy, I don't think is all that terrible. Obviously, the situation with the housing market is very, very bad. But you're going to have to build a bunch more homes, and you're going to have to go through some rezoning processes, I think, if they really want to help with that. And they say, well, just deport everyone. Well, it's a pipe dream. Listen, the United States, I almost think when you look at some of the things happening in Europe, you hear people and politicians talking about remigration. You don't hear any of that in the States. So you could say Europe is more liberal than America in the sense, but they seem to be a lot more aggressive on immigration policy when it comes to like remigration. And I don't hear any of that in the United States yet. And maybe it's a delay. But with us, it's more so we're trying to deport illegals, and there's a fight to even deport the illegals, to where they say it's not just, and if they're illegal and they don't commit any other crimes other than being illegal, they should still be here. And that's when you see all of the protests and the people calling ICE agents terrorists, domestic terrorists, or whatever. And that's the ICE agents are trying to deport illegal immigrants, people that don't have a right to be here. And obviously that is a big problem when they're here. And I see this uninformed people talking about this all the time. It's liberals mainly. You see the short clips on X, and I think they come from TikTok, and you see them on X, but they'll say, well, these people don't hurt you, they help you. Well, no, they 100%, especially for young people, they 100% hurt. When you're talking about illegal immigrants coming in, willing to do labor for cheaper, it is going to suppress the jobs market. And then on top of that, you have actual legal programs like H-1B, where they come in and they get higher quality jobs that should be going to kids right out of college that have invested money, whether it's $100,000 or whatever, into a degree, and the job is being clipped by an H-1B recipient. And so these are all big issues. And then you also have more of a competitive housing market, taking in the amount of immigrants we have. I mean, we have the highest population, at least we think we do, of illegal immigrants out of any country. And so it seems like it's kind of a big problem, and we should probably get these people out. But it's like, this is even a big issue for people in the United States. The country altogether, I think, is probably, in a general sense, especially when you look at our demographic shift, it's probably too liberal, which is funny because I know liberals would say we're way too conservative. That's just kind of, but I mean, if you look at a bird's eye view, look at where we were in 1950 versus where we are today. I don't even think there's any question. I don't think these people really have a historical basis to go off of on where the United States was 50, 60 years ago versus where we are today. And so to me, that's a big problem as well. But in terms of this, people just woke up one day and said, okay, it's been long enough. Now we're blaming Trump for the economy and everything costs too much. Well, it's like the exact same thing as Biden. You want to say that's bad? Okay, it's bad. That's fine. But like the fundamental stuff, we do have relatively tamed inflation. Now you can say this stimulus is a gimmick, but understand what this is. Trump has made this money not out of thin air. He's not printing money and giving it to people. The money was made through tariffs, right? And you say, well, that's passed on to the consumer. Not really. And by the way, they've actually factored this in. And they say the average, and this is key, the average, maybe it's a family of four or a person will pay because of the Trump tariffs, more is around, they said $600. The stimulus is $2,000. So you're going for paying $600 more because of the tariffs, because of the mass tariffs, and you're getting $2,000 back from $600. So even if you want to use the argument, oh, we're just getting our money back because we pay more because they jack up the prices because of the tariffs. Number one, that's not how it works. It depends on the sector. It depends if there's like somebody has a monopoly over something to where they can raise the prices. A lot of these companies cannot raise prices because it's a competitive market. But if they do that, they say it's $600 per person and you get $2,000 back. So that's the argument you need to make, because they will make the argument of, well, we're just getting our $2,000 back that we lost because everyone jacked up prices because of the tariffs. Well, no. Number one, now Powell has said, oh yeah, they are inflationary. But I heard Powell 2 months ago say they have not really been inflationary. And the numbers show, listen, if it was a 5% core inflation rate, I'd say, yeah, this is a big issue. It's 3.1. And the true inflation is like 2.3. If you include energy, what about gas prices? People always bitch about that. I don't hear any of that now. But it's always, they want to cry about something. And listen, I'm not trying to gaslight people. I understand. I get it. It's really bad. And we try and help, but there's only so much. Like, you want to talk about, they can't even deport 1 million people without people going crazy. We may have 15, 20 million, people say it's more, of an illegal immigrant population. We can't even deport 1 million without people rioting about it. So it's just a sheer volume of liberalism in the country. That's a big issue for Trump to even accomplish any of this without a bunch of things standing in his way. This is with a conservative Supreme Court. This is with the House and the Senate, and unfortunately the filibuster, which can neutralize that to a degree. And so, look, I don't know. Listen, we've also got Trump. They say maybe Trump is doing this because the Supreme Court ruling is not going to go well. And that's going to be something we're going to have to deal with. a Republican Supreme Court ruling against Trump saying he's unjust to unilaterally levy tariffs at the rate in which he was doing, or something like that. But I saw there's only a 20% chance they rule in his favor. So now he's saying, well, no, it's going to the people. We're giving $2,000. But like, so how are we going to change the tariff policy now? We've already made deals with countries where they've agreed to invest. And look, sometimes they don't actually do it, but they've agreed to invest hundreds of billions of dollars because of the leverage of the tariff on the country. And then the country says, we don't want this tariff to be on us. We want to do free trade with you. Okay, make investments into our country. And then, we will take the tariff off. Well, if the tariffs are removed, none of these countries are really going to feel the need to have to invest in the United States. They invest into it because they're fearful of a tariff, coming back on. I mean, I don't really see how this works. Now, I've heard that Trump can get around it. It's more of an optics issue. That's really what it is. If Trump has to remove these tariffs and then go through Congress to put them back on, they say, well, even the conservative Supreme Court rules against Trump, and he's a dictator because he shouldn't have that much power to unilaterally put all these tariffs on. Well, the tariff policy is the tariff policy. If anything, people made a crazy big deal, and I think it was honestly probably, I was surprised at the tariffs that were put on the Liberation Day, but they were taken off after 10 days. People made this huge deal like it was this crazy thing. The tariffs go on. Within 3 months, the stock market hits an all-time high. Okay, maybe we overreacted a little bit. Maybe Trump was spooked by whatever the 10-year yield, but they got taken off after 10 days, and the stock market was at an all-time high in like 3 months after that. So, look, people are going to be angry. I mean, you're not going to change the housing market in 10 months unless there's like some type of crash and then the stock market crashes. So, yeah, we got the housing market to crash, but then people bitch anyways about their 401ks. This is how it works with the economy. So, and now people wake up and they're like, well, it's been 10 months now, so it's all Trump's fault. Well, I mean, all right. I mean, you got to have to give them a handout. So you're going to have to give $2,000 or something. I mean, they tried to do that with the Doge checks. The Doge, they obviously didn't save anything. I don't even know what the issue. Doge wasn't even able to touch or audit the Pentagon or look into it. It's some real big problem. But, Trump comes out. The guy's a boomer, and they expect him to relate to Gen Z. Well, it's just not going to happen. And Trump tries, but it's just, let's be honest, the guy he's very old. I mean, and so you're going to have something like this. But a lot of this is like the perfect storm to me. And it's probably aided by the government shutdown. Like without a government shutdown, his approval, the spread would probably like -8 or -9, which is still not great. But you have to understand with how polarizing Trump is already and the media coverage he gets, it's very likely once you get in, you're going to have a negative approval rating. That's kind of how it goes. I mean, look at Biden's approval rating and how horrible it was. So it doesn't really surprise me that his approval is what it is. And I don't think it matters really at all outside of like current sentiment, right? You can say, well, the sentiment for Trump is not good. But if the approval rating, if the approval rating was -11 and it's 2 days before the midterms, it is an issue, yes. But the approval rating is probably going to be like -5 or -6, and that's, you can easily win with it leading up to the midterms, and you can easily win with that. This is like all the issues with the shutdown and stuff, and it's come out with Chuck Schumer. I mean, they did want that shutdown to last through those off-year elections, and they correctly calculated that would help them. To what degree, I don't know, but I think it extended the margins a little bit, which you can kind of cope with if you are a Republican and say, well, that's a bit of an exaggeration then. The margins probably shouldn't have been that big. They were exaggerated because of a current situation. And they kind of take advantage of that, just like in 2022 with Roe v. Wade. And they thought they were going to get this gay marriage ruling overturned. They were going to use that as well. It didn't happen with the Supreme Court yesterday. So we'll have to see. But either way, guys, that's just the current situation. I think people just woke up and they said, well, now it's Trump's fault. All right. I mean, you look like the fundamental numbers. We've got 3 rate cuts now. We've got little inflation relative to what it was under Biden. We've got money generation, which potentially will, I mean, we might be able to, I mean, because if you think about it, if it's $300 or $400 billion, I mean, you could pay down. The problem is we have to service the debt. It's another trillion, but you pay down 10-15% of the debt. See, that's not going to move people. It's unfortunate. This is why the debt is never paid down, because The debt is a macro issue. Nobody cares about that when you're talking about midterms or the 2028 election. Even they want micro issues. The micro issue is things cost too much. And will the $2,000 cause inflation? Well, yes. I mean, you're going to cause inflation, but not to a high degree. The money is being reallocated. It's not being printed. We're not printing more money and adding it to circulation and then people spend it like with the stimuluses in 2020 and 2021. But the thing is yeah, because you're giving people disposable income and they're going to spend it, the demand for stuff's going to go up, the price of it's going to go up. But I don't think to the same degree. And it's more retail oriented, I think, when it comes to whatever that inflation creates. I think it's, you know, it's not a huge problem, I would say. I mean, they can calculate that, right? They should calculate it. Look, they need to probably wait to give those stimulus checks out because you give them out in March and then there's like some inflation, then they're going to use that against you for the midterms. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.